Good evening to you all. Devina Sharma, Deputy Director of IRC. Welcome to the third webinar organized by IRC, thus establishing a series of webinars, Network Synergy. Today's webinar is on life in the times of COVID-19. It is without a doubt that one can expressly agree on how the pandemic has altered various aspects of our lives, including professional and work prospects. Our ways of functioning have definitely taken a toll no matter what line of occupation we are in. New techniques and strategies have now been adopted in order to cope with the challenges faced during these times. Hence, it is IRC's endeavor to address such concerns in order to inspire us and encourage us all to not lose hope, but to be dynamic and fight through the dilemmas with utmost gusto. With us today, we have some very valuable speakers who have agreed to share with us their inputs and experiences regarding the scene. We have today with us Mr. Pratim Ranjan Bose, who will be moderating the webinar. He had also embraced this role during the first ever webinar by IRC. We cannot thank him enough for coming on board once again. I now request him to proceed with the rest of the session. Thank you.
A very good evening to everyone. We know COVID has changed life and the impact has been multidimensional. Often we are gripped by fear and sitting at home. Maybe we are, about job opportunities, whatever we are thinking, but the impact is much more deeper and wider than that. So we have gone into we have selected speakers from areas which are among the most affected or where, this is not really the way things are happening is not really normal. So that includes industry. We have the industry representative, the regional director of FICCI from Guwahati. He will be joining a little late. We have Ms. Anindita Sharvadikari from the entertainment segment. We have Mr. Partho, who is a sportsman, Ms. Yasmin from the education segment. So that includes the most affected areas. Entertainment is, we are looking at it from two aspects. One is, of course, that's a very important element of life, and it's also an industry. So we would like to know that how is the impact on industry on the segment, and whether it would bring about any changes in the way things are happening. Let's start with the issue that is impacting most lives, young lives, that is education. So I'll invite Ms. Yasmin to come forward and speak.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Mr. Bose, for giving me this opportunity. I'm Ghazala Yasmin, and I teach at the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication at Alia University in Kolkata. So, like I already said, that this unprecedented situation that we are in has brought about some unprecedented limitations on us, where this kind of, limit to mobility, which we would have otherwise never imagined. Because when we talk about the 21st century, when we talk about the digital age, it's been, predominantly, it's been predominant, the kind of connectivity that we have. Like we used to say, I say somewhere in the 1960s, 70s, even going to the UK or the US was like, Saat Samandar Paar Jana hai. But now, everything is at the tip of the hand, and you just connect over your WhatsApp, over your Zoom, over your Facebook Messenger, and you connect to people just around anywhere and everywhere across the globe. But with COVID-19, we are in a new situation post 24th March, especially in the Indian context. Suddenly everything is at a standstill. So nobody knew how to deal with it. The first time when the lockdown was announced, it was like a bolt from the blue. And, even the mere imagination that we'll be spending 15 days at home, without any kind of interaction. Social interaction was, I'm sure it had put a lot of people into depression, because we've been used to this very high, high flowing lifestyle where we are connected all the time. We are going to parties, we are going to movies, we are going to malls. So, so this sudden jerk where you were back to, to a time where, this physical distance made a lot of, it was predominant, and it was like kind of, preoccupying your thoughts, created a huge problem. And I think the biggest problem came in terms of, the learning and the education process. So right from the PhD levels to a primary level kid, the major hit that, any other sector would have taken, it was predominantly education. Because that was the time, during March, where there were, a lot of exams, final examinations and board examinations, CBSE and ICC happened. So now this challenge, and because I also teach at a university, so this was unthought of. And despite the fact that we did have options of online learning, we did have options of video conferencing and things like that, but we always prefer to, have a face-to-face interaction, because as teachers also, we felt that it was very important to kind of, look at and read the body language, the feedback that you got from your students in a physical classroom. But here now you're in a situation where that is not possible. And what's been, this very, if you can call it the Darwinian philosophy, this very capability of mankind to adapt to any kind of a new situation, that is something magical. So it was, it was just a matter of time. Like I have children, and my younger son is in class 6, but I can tell you he has some cousins who are like studying in KG, and even they didn't have problems to switch over to the Zoom platform for their online classes. So, so this capability that is there, but it was not explored. And what came in terms of education was this new learning, which was called the ICT, the Information and Communication Technology Oriented Learning. So now you had more interactive options. This was a digital space where you could interact with your teachers, where you could have videos. It was a lot more fun. It gave you a lot more ideas how to prepare your lectures and slides and PowerPoints. But then the biggest problem that was there, and especially in a country like India, where still a vast majority of the population does not have the digital infrastructure, then this divide, because in a university like where I teach, it's a state university, but a lot of our children or our students come from a rural profile. So for them, even to access, a bare minimum 4G network on their phone was a big problem. So then how do we reach out to these people? While students who were there in Kolkata could easily access Wi-Fi and they could learn. So this created a kind of a divide, this divide which is already there in society, and, the rich and the poor kind of a thing. So this infrastructure divide kind of even created an imbalance in terms of learning, and that was a huge challenge. So this is, an issue that we are grappling with, because despite the fact that there are a lot of advantages of ICT and digital learning, it being able to break physical barriers, like, all of us are sitting in different places and we can connect. So that's a huge bonus. I mean, you don't have to go anywhere. I remember when we used to organize seminars and conferences in college or university, it was a big tedious task to kind of, work out the logistics of who will be traveling from where, and, money was an issue in a government institution and all that. But now, I've been doing webinars in my university where we are, kind of pulling in resources from the US, and, some of the best professors sitting in an Ivy League university can be accessed, online. That was not possible. Then, of course, like I said, that interactive learning also gave us a lot of options, and we were exploring it with the digital technology. The reach was extensive. And, when you say that, there's a kind of a dichotomy, inclusion. When you say it's extensive, but then it was not inclusive because of the digital divide that is there. So there cropped in a lot of challenges that were there before us. And these challenges were basically, to be able to break the digital divide, one. And second, the non-familiarity of a digital space. Supposing, there's a person who's staying, in a village. Now you tell him to go to a big city like Bombay and Delhi. So, there's this huge problem. Like for first timers, ye Dilli Ka Babu and is tarah ki movies mein, you must have seen, that when a, rural folk goes to a, hi-fi smart city, then he comes across a lot of crooks and he doesn't know how to negotiate the streets of, Delhi, the underbelly. So all that is there. So similarly, in a digital space, there is a huge problem of, unfamiliarity and a lot of danger lurking around you. And with that, you have issues like impersonation, you have issues like phishing, you have issues like, fake news and misinformation. So you don't really know how to trust and where to trust in this huge digital space. It's a huge world out there, and you just start, trying to negotiate an uncharted territory. So then, as educators, and I being in the mass communication field, and because I was closely working with Google, we felt that it was incumbent upon us to kind of devise strategies as to, find out, there's no option. You have to use this technology. So what is the safe way to use this technology? That is something which we focused on. And so the very basics that, you need to think 10 times before forwarding a WhatsApp message, because it might land you up in trouble. There have been instances where a simple forward, maybe an inane forward, an innocent forward has been criminal in the sense, people have been lynched and murdered because of a rumor that spread on WhatsApp. So these were the restrictions and these were the challenges that we had to grapple with, and we are still grappling with. It's an enormous challenge that's there. But like I said, life moves on and we just learn to find our way. You just throw, somebody in the water and he just, moves his limbs around and tries to find a way. So that's exactly how we're trying to deal with this pandemic situation. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. I'll get back to you with more specific comments,
Sure.
from the point of view of a educationist, as what are the specific challenges you face. So far as I understand, insofar as the certain things are a little inflated, probably in my view. I've been a business journalist for 3 decades, and I traveled. I have very good understanding of geography. I can tell you that. Some of the ideas about the connectivity issues, lack of accessibility, are a little out of proportion. Because when I see the touch points of e-commerce sales and all these things, the data is available and it is changing every day. When I see the 45 crore smartphone population increasing by 35%, 40% a year, there are a lot of issues. So in the higher education, I thought that the problem will be a little more manageable when compared to school education, because school education by character is a little different. And in higher education, in management institutes and etc., the use of this mode has been there for quite some time. They were using hybrid mode. So we'll get back to you with more specific, for more specific views on this. Till then, I'll invite Ms. Anindita Sarvadhikari to start her presentation.
Hello, I'm Anindita Sarvadhikari. I'm a filmmaker. I write and I direct films. I don't need to say how badly exactly the industry has been affected, because we can all see the theaters are closed. We do not know when they are going to. We are going to be in a position to actually have hall releases of cinemas. And in fact, during the period of lockdown, so television software was also not being produced. Now, a television software is like everyday staple food. So it's a huge market. So they have started shooting recently, but it's with great limitations and with great risks also, because because of obvious reasons, because you have to keep physical distance. Most of the unit members, they have to maintain a lot of these sanitization processes. Technicians have to wear PPE costumes. So, when it comes to these mega serials or soap operas, whatever you call it, they are done in an enclosed space, in a fixed location. So they have started production. But when it comes to cinema or any the other kind of ways films are being shot or entertainment industry works, it's very uncertain, because even if you see, the films are now being released on OTT platforms like for example, like Amazon Prime, Netflix. There are several others, Z5. But there is a huge need for software because people are stuck at home. They can't go out, so the need for it is there. But how do you shoot them? And because when you shoot a film, you need several locations. You cannot do it in the way a mega serial is shot. In fact, I was talking to some of the actors, and they're saying that even movement of camera or movement of actors is restricted. So it's basically, they're just kind of somehow producing everyday material so that it reaches your drawing room by evening or night. But it is just kind of a survival hand to mouth. But otherwise, the bigger, the larger industry, like film industry, advertising films, a few are being made. But you see, what is happening is, film is not just shooting. There is post-production, there is dubbing, there is editing. We recently heard that there were rumors that this Bachchan family, they were infected, and there are conjectures that they might have got it from dubbing a certain series. So enclosed spaces, which there is no ventilation and all that. I don't need to explain the problems of working under in this situation, in this days of coronavirus. This exists. So these are the technical issues. Finance is also affected, because if industries are not working, industries have stopped production. We depend on advertisers, on money coming in from people who are not dedicated producers, but who are also into doing other stuff and put in money into cinema. So there is a cash crunch. But most importantly, unless the situation, the curve is somehow flattened, getting back to work, let's say for me personally, I have got offers. I was supposed to start shooting a film from April, but of course it was not possible. And now when I look at the situation, I might have to write a script just to be able to shoot in this situation, and I cannot, because I have a 6-year-old child, I have an 8-year-old dad, father, so I cannot put them at risk. And worst situation, like I said, is with the actors, because they are the ones who actually have to face the camera. Technicians can take precautions and all that. So one does not want to put others into this kind of a threat situation, even though one has the opportunity to produce a film. So basically, entertainment industry is very badly hit. Like I said, the day-to-day consumption material are being produced, but the quality is seriously compromised. The scripts are being written so that it kind of fits into this kind of restricted conditions, parameters. And yes, that's about it. I could come back later if anybody has any questions.
Thanks. Nice inputs. I would like to know from you when we come back, as we have seen in every sphere, that it is impacting certain basic terms of business, right? So with regard to, say, Bengali film or serial industry, that has not been in the pink of health, really. And there is no dearth of content on Netflix and etc. So we would like to know, later when we'll come back to you, that whether there will be some basic operational changes. I'm not talking about the way people act, but I'm talking about the finance part, the way the industry operates. So should we see a little more, change in, should we see some shakeouts? Should we see a chance for restructuring, etc.? Thanks for your presentation. Our next speaker is Vishwajit Chakraborty. He has worked across India as a management professional, has been with chambers, corporates, and He's now stationed as Regional Director FICCI in Guwahati. He's an Assamese by and a good friend. So Vishwajit, over to you with, and we will expect a little more input on, you are also representing Northeast. So if I understand, in the entire country, if one region has telecom connectivity issues, so far as I have traveled this country, okay, so I know for sure it's there in Northeast. So how you are, give us your feedback on the economic perspective, industry perspective, and life in general.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Bose. Thank you for the invitation and thank you for the time. I think let me begin by saying that I believe we as a race, as the humanity, is going through one of its defining moments currently. Because a year or two in the life of humanity is but a moment. And I think we are going through a defining moment. Life is going to be different going forward. There have been defining moments earlier, and one of them. Having said that, you see, when the COVID crisis started, in the beginning, I don't think many people had an idea how far its impact is going to be. But as we are going along, we see that there is not a single sphere of life or human activity that has been left untouched by the crisis. If you look at the economy in India, for example, today FICCI has revised India's growth forecast to minus 4.5% for the current year. And personally, I feel it could actually become worse than that. It could be worse. Many sectors of the economy are literally at the brink of bankruptcy. The tourism sector, for example, the small tour operators, the hoteliers, they are on the brink of bankruptcy. Some sectors like agriculture, food processing, etc., are probably doing a little better, but even they are affected. Then you have you have sectors like entertainment, electronic entertainment, the digital medium and all. They are probably doing better than before. So that is a major change. The emergence of platforms like Zoom, which has done huge amount of business during the crisis. I think the platform that we are using today, that is another phenomenon that we can see. There are also sectors like retail, which are really in bad shape. So I'd like to actually look at the economy in three parts. The one part which is badly affected and which will take a long time to recover. Then there are parts which are not so badly affected and they will recover soon. Then there is a third part which are badly affected but they will recover fast. For example, the retail sector. The retail sector, I think, is going to, it is very badly affected today. But going forward, it is likely to recover quickly once we come out of the crisis. But then in every sector, I think the way we do business is going to change. For example, if we look at the tourism sector, today we have big hotels, big resorts which attract tourists, and so the smaller resorts and all, they have a different model of doing business. But going forward, will you be in a situation, if asked questions like, will you be in a situation where people would not like to stay in big hotels? They will look for smaller properties where there are only a few rooms and there is not much of a crowd. We have to ask questions like, what will happen to the hotels? Going forward, are multiplexes going to still be around 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line? Will they still be able to get customers? Or people will prefer watching films on TV? Or would they prefer going to a drive-in theater where they don't have to mingle with the crowd? So I think these are some of the questions which are coming up and which we'll have to seek answers to very soon. There is going to be a paradigm shift in the way we do business. Already, even in a place like Guwahati, which is not the most advanced as far as modern amenities are concerned, even in a place like Guwahati, I think a large proportion of people have shifted to buying things online, even from local vendors. So anybody who does not have an online presence is going to have a tough time, be it a grocery shop, be it a clothes shop, be it an electronic shop, is going to have a tough time going forward. So online presence is the next thing which I think is going to come up in a big way going forward. Uh, then you mentioned about the connectivity issues in the Northeast. You see, I have a son who studies in a school in Guwahati, and I can see that he is having classes right from morning 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, all online. They are even having exams online. At the same time, I have a friend, or rather a friend's friend, who is a professor in a place called Along in Arunachal Pradesh. And he happens to be from a village which is further away, closer to the Chinese border. Now, when the pandemic started, he thought, well, this is something which is starting and colleges are going to be closed for a few days. So let me take a holiday and let me go home. His family, his wife, his kids, everyone was there. He went home and he has not been able to come back till today. He's stuck there. And his college has been insisting that you take online classes. Now, the village that he lives in does not have mobile connectivity. Forget about internet. So what he is doing is, every 2 or 3 days, he drives down 15 kilometers to a certain petrol pump where they have a little bit of net connectivity. He prepares notes and then he sends those notes by WhatsApp to his students. So this is a ritual which he follows every 1 or 2 days and goes there, sends those notes. And if the students have any questions, they also ask those questions on WhatsApp, and he can see them only after 2 days. So when you say the digital divide, I think yes, it is truly there. It is not only about having the money to buy the bandwidth. It is also about having the towers which will give you the connectivity. There are many parts of the country, particularly in the Northeast, where we do not have that connectivity. Already people are talking about internet connectivity to the internet being a fundamental right. Not there in our constitution or any statute book. But I think this is something which is going to be popular demand going forward. And providing internet connectivity is going to be one of the basic responsibilities that the government will have to fulfill. It cannot happen in 2 years, but it is going to happen. If we are to ensure accessibility to education, I think this is something which we will have to provide at a very basic level, fast internet connectivity. But it is not just connectivity, you know. There are some opportunities also which are coming up for businesses. For example, if I want to do some online classes, and I can do it over many platforms, Zoom or Google Classes or whatever. But what about the content? I am not going to be able to use the Blackboard anymore. So the content has to be developed delivered in a more interactive way through a digital medium. Many companies have already started working on creating digital content for classes, colleges, and universities. That is an opportunity which is coming up for companies to look at. I think these are some random thoughts which I thought I'll just share.
Yes, you're very correct. Digital is going to rule our life than like never before. E-commerce is back or more than the pre-COVID period.
Yes.
So what the way I see it, Vishwajit, is that these even CMI employment data is also saying that the unemployment, it is back to the pre-COVID period. The way I'm seeing is that there is a huge displacement happening within. It's not about it was moving in this direction. So it's like a bus. It was moving in some direction. Some people got off, some people got in. The net sum remaining same, but a change has happened. The way that is how I am looking at it.
Well, if I can respond to that, you see, with the COVID crisis, what happened? We announced the lockdown without giving a notice period. And probably that is the reason why many people were very anguished and they wanted to go back home and all that. Many people went back home. If I look at the Northeast, for example, lots of people actually came down from Bombay, Delhi, and all over the place, even from West Bengal. They came back home and they brought a lot of corona with them, infected the local population. And now majority of them, the Assam government was very keen that so many people are coming back, they're skilled, so let's train them, let's engage them, let's make entrepreneurs out of them and all that. But what we find is that majority of them are now going back or planning to go back. So this migration that has happened because of COVID, that is not a permanent thing. People are going to go back. But I think the problem is not just about the migration that has happened. The problem is elsewhere. Till now, majority of the companies, the MSMEs included, have continued to pay salaries, if not the full salary, a certain amount of the salary. They have tried not to lay off people. There have been some layoffs, there have been some salary cuts across the board, but that's been the general trend. But if this trend continues, then many sectors are going to be so badly affected that many people will actually lose jobs. But you are right that the net sum will probably remain more or less the same. That you might lose jobs in tourism. One of the challenges that we are going to face is reskilling these people who are losing their jobs.
Thanks, Vishwajit. So let's go to the next person, ex-Ranji cricketer. My son is a sportsman and he's a karate black belt and he has a trainer. So for last, since March, he has been taking his daily training on WhatsApp video. Welcome, Mr. Partho. Please tell us about the scene, how sportsmen are training, how they are keeping fit, and the typical problem with the sportsman is that unlike any other job, any other thing, he has a definite lifespan. His professional career is limited. So 1 year or 6 months gone out of that means he is really the worst impacted. Please come over.
Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Bose. I am Partho. I am a Ranji Trophy cricketer for Bengal. Yeah, you quite rightly said that. Actually, as a sportsman, it's been the 4 months, it's been quite difficult for all of us. Actually, as a cricketer, basically, I play the game of cricket. So, as any other sports, as a sportsman, our duty has always been to go out in the field and practice. So, yeah, it's been, we've been going through a very struggling time for the last 4 months. And as a cricketer, I do feel that, I'm feeling a bit of a claustrophobic because it doesn't only affect your, fitness schedule, but it also affects your, morale. I mean, as a cricketer or as any sportsman, it affects your psyche because as we grew up playing cricket and, we never knew at the start of this pandemic that it would last so long. So we are not actually prepared of this situation, That's kind of an unprecedented situation that has, come up all of a sudden. And I don't know either, in fact, we don't know how long it is going to last. So as a sportsman, it is actually very difficult to cope up with this situation. But then again, we have to realize that, we have to, mold ourselves according to the situation. And as you were saying that your son is in karate, is training at home. I personally believe that, sports is something that cannot be taught online. You have to go into the field and you have to practice. Okay, fine. You can say, that as sportsman, you can, you can go to the gym and you can do your fitness stuff and all. But then again, as, because I play the game of cricket, which needs a lot of outdoor activities, we need to hone our skills on a daily basis. So that cannot be done if you are locked down in your home. So in that aspect, yeah, it is quite, difficult for all of us. And I think, a sportsman body is more like a machine because the more we, practice, the more we, sweat it out on the ground, the better it gets. It's affecting all of us right now in a great deal. Like every other sector, the sports is another sector which is, badly hit because of the pandemic. Yeah, but I have, I don't know if you are watching that or not, but, ICC has taken an initiative to start a test series between England and West Indies, which is currently taking place in England. The good thing is that the cricket has back to normalcy in European countries, but then again, there are two major problems with that. First of all, I found that the galleries and the stands are completely empty. because I think in this situation, which is a completely legitimate. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, which is at this point of time, which is completely a legitimate decision. At human lives are at stake, so you cannot allow spectators to come and watch. So there are two main aspects of this. Firstly, as a cricketer or as any sportsman, you are losing a lot of money because tickets are not being sold, so you are losing that money, and it will have a chain reaction, because in our countries also, sporting bodies, there are a lot of sporting bodies like BCCI and like IFA, and like if you take hockey, there are a lot of sporting bodies. So I believe if the money flow comes at a halt, then every clubs and district will obviously face this problem. So I think as a cricketer, this is another very concerning thing for all of us, apart from other things. I don't know when it is going to end or not, but as a cricketer or as a sportsman, I am trying to, the only thing that we can do, we can engage ourselves in like, we just have to wait and watch and do our stuffs in like in gym, or like we may engage ourselves in, if we have a playground in our locality, so we can do that stuff. But largely it has made a huge effect on our life, not only like morally, but also like if you take the commercial part, that has been also been affected hugely.
Thanks, Partho. Let me start my question with you, Partho. Is that, this, as you rightly pointed out, we haven't thought of this consequence. Like these players at their district level players, club level players, now they get remuneration from the club, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
in
Actually,
this
let me
situation,
make it very clear to you that in India, like basically when we play for BCCI or we play for like domestic matches, be it age group cricket, we are directly contracted with the BCCI or CAB, not CAB but BCCI. The fund comes from the BCCI and we get the money from BCCI, right? But in district level or in club level, it's more of a verbal contract. It's more of a verbal contract, no particular contract with players. Like, unlike football. Now, footballers, they have a contract with their clubs, but cricketers, they do not have a contract with their clubs. So it's based on faith, basically based on faith.
so are people getting money?
People like, if you're talking about, across the country or like in Calcutta or whatever.
No, just from whatever you get.
Yeah, they are like, till date, it's okay. The money flow is good. Everyone is getting their dues, it's fine. But I don't know if, suppose now the government of India, they do not give a green signal, to conduct the matches, the tournament doesn't happen at all. Then I don't think, because if the tournament doesn't happen at all, the matches do not take place, then the teams, obviously they won't make teams. And if they won't make teams, then obviously, players won't get money. It's all like, chain reaction. Like if you have seen in football, in Calcutta, this monsoon time, the football tournament takes place. But this season, it was not possible due to this pandemic. So I actually do not have any idea about the football, but because the cricket season starts from November, so we are praying for the, hoping for the best.
Thank you so much, Partho. Mr. Sharmadikar, how about that? What I was asking that about the basics of business in film and television serial, this entertainment business in Kolkata or India, whatever. Do you see any new thing that will be, is there a possibility of structural change in the system? Any structural change that you notice?
Well, we are still kind of hanging on to the nostalgia of the old process, but it is evident that there's going to be a huge change, structural. See, even before the pandemic hit us, you all know that going to the theater, the number of people going to the theater has reduced. The digital platform and the television, they have been gaining market more and more. I do not see going back to the theater as a possibility at all in the near future or even in the distant future because of the reality. I mean, anyway, people, and so I think the industry is going to move, the audience is going to hugely move into the digital platform. Now, obviously, and the digital platform is doing very well, as even the speaker before me, he said. So the digital platform also has its own kind of language because the screen is small. The content, it is completely uncensored. The kind of content is also very, very different from what you see in everyday television soaps, I don't think the big budget movies are going to be made again in the near future, like the Bollywood or even the Hollywood movies. So that automatically dictates a change in the content, because which means that the content probably, see, for if I talk about myself as a filmmaker, I was about to shoot a film which was based in pre-pandemic times. But now the pandemic reality is a part of today. And if I want to base my story today, the reality, of course, plays an important part. Now, I think it happens to you too, any one of you. It's almost like you watch, if you're watching a web series or a cinema on your phone or whatever, on the digital platform, you see people hugging, kissing, holding hands. And there is an automatic reaction that, okay, so you kind of, it is a part of the pre-pandemic life. So the post-pandemic stories are going to evolve. Post-pandemic infrastructure, logistical structure, setup, that is going to dictate a lot of the content. But I think that cinema is going to find its way. We had cinema even being made during Second World War, wars. So this is a war, though the war is between a virus and the human race. But I think the entertainment industry will find its own way, its own language, and a huge shift to the digital platform. So probably there are going to be more such platforms coming up, more ways of screening it. Because like you said yourself, that the mobile phone has reached everybody. You travel, even before the pandemic, if you travel by a busy local train, you'll see everybody with their headphones on and on a small screen. They're watching a movie, some content on YouTube. They're watching something on the phone, on the tiny screen. So if something is so easily accessible to you, I don't think going to the theater, I mean, just for the experience, and when things are not so claustrophobic anymore, it may just exist, but not in the near future. So obviously that will dictate the content, the way things are being made, huge units, big units, big cast. Maybe not, maybe more intensive, smaller stories. Yeah, more one-to-one interactions, hopefully. Because that's also the kind of stories that are coming to me, That's the stories I would like to tell now. Thank you.
Hi. Yes, this might be the end of so-called multiplexes and cinema halls. There will be some, but they will be very few, and the charges will be very high. This is completely lifestyle product. And the rest will be digital. I'm pretty sure, because I haven't been to any multiplex none of us have been to multiplexes probably for last 3 or 4 months. And I don't think I'll be there for next at least 1 year. I am very afraid of catching infection. Okay. So a question for you from Vishwajit is that, Mr. Sarbadikari, how about production with social distancing in place? Do you see remote or distributed production as something that will start happening? What I think here, before I can add, I think during this pandemic and lockdown, I did one talk show, one just radio talk for All India Radio. My friend did is doing episodes for Doordarshan, everything sitting at home.
Already people are making films. During the lockdown, people were making films with, on iPhones and stuff like that. So I'm just saying that more innovative style of making a film, making content and creating content is going to definitely develop. Definitely, because like I said, cinema will find its way. But then again, like quality is also important. Audience have become very quality conscious. So I think that if people are going to make films, short films, series, like I said, a smaller units, not like not like a unit of 170 to 100 people. I just recently shot a film and it was supposed to release. It was launched on 6th March. It's doing the rounds of festivals. So that was shot with a large unit. That kind of production logistic, I think, will have to go. People will have to adapt to smaller units. Maybe and work has been done before that way. Work has always been, independent work has been going on in that way already. So that will become more prolific, just a cameraman, a recordist, maybe less of frills. Yeah.
I do agree. I think you're making sense. And I'm sure it will happen. I was very encouraged by this Google India Fund. Bengali market, whether it's literature, whether it's entertainment, it's the digital content has been pretty weak. And there is the aggregation is yet to happen. Even if you see, for example, news aggregation services, so you will find that in Hindi, English is of course there, but till date there is no aggregation service in Bengali. So I'm very, I really hope that this Google India Fund reaches Bengal, because Sundar Pichai was talking about many languages, and unfortunately he didn't mention Bengali. So, Ms. Yasmin, this is about back to the topic of education. This is very important. Thankfully my son didn't have a board exam this year, but people are suffering. But the main problem is that the education has to be there. They must not lose the time. I mean, otherwise yes, during World War, people must have lost time, but the world was pretty slow in those days. One cannot afford to lose that time today with so much of technology in place. And what I found really, my wife is also a teacher. What I found is that initially there was a jerk because they never thought, there was a mind block in using digital mediums. See, I know in school, CBSE has been pushing these for quite some time. But later on, when I see her teaching, nowadays, even the board work she is doing, so those tools are already there. So how you are, insofar as your university education is concerned, the research work, laboratory research work must be suffering to some extent, but otherwise the research work, how do you think, forget about the initial jargon, how are you keeping up? How are you trying to find new solutions, new tools into it?
Yeah, so you're very right, there's this huge new set of challenges, as you would have, noticed, the examination system per se is hugely affected. So we are still in the doldrums when the central government, when the UGC, HRDC is saying that initially they said that exams will not be held and students will just be marked, would be given an aggregate percentage on the basis of the earlier semesters. But just a couple of weeks back, they again, changed their stance, and now they are kind of almost forcing state universities to hold examinations, but nobody knows as to what is the right way of holding an examination. With science, there is another set of challenges with laboratory experiments, like you rightly mentioned, how to conduct those experiments online. It's very difficult, almost impossible. With engineering experiments and practical classes, that they are hugely suffering. With languages and humanities too, the best way of conducting an exam, in this kind of a situation, the easiest and the simplest way would be to have an MCQ, a multiple choice question kind of a, that pattern of examination. But that does not suffice to, papers in humanities and languages, which needs a copious understanding, whether the student has had an understanding of a broad concept, a broad theory. So then it becomes and where, you know, of course, language and, you know, putting those concepts in your own words is also very important for us to understand and judge that the student has got the gist of what we've been teaching. We also, like in mass communication, we have a paper called Media Production, where we primarily have, classes which are hands-on classes in teaching them the basic skills of camera, editing, and the technical aspects of production. And then we ask the students to write a script and then go and direct their own films on the basis of that script, maybe a half-an-hour documentary per se. So what happened with my final batch of students, my master's students, that, you know, they just simply had completed the workshop on, you know, the techniques of lighting and sound and how to use the camera and so on and so forth, but they could not really go and shoot the film. Now this is a 200 marks paper, so now it is very difficult for me without seeing. So now what, for practical papers, the UGC says that now you have to mark them, you know, on the basis of the internal assessments. But for a 200 marks paper, when, you know, it is primarily based on a final product like film, and you don't have the film, you know, before you, you just have a script which is just an idea, you know, not an illustrated version of the idea, it becomes very, very difficult. The other challenge, I'll tell you, what we're facing is that, online teaching or digital learning is, you know, kind of student directed, but then the student has to be an active participant. What happens most of the times, and I've seen my children also do that, you know, that the teacher is giving the lecture, they simply put off the, you know, camera, they're on mute, and they're like, you know, in a world of their own, probably watching something else, you know, they get distracted very easily. So then it is very difficult, and it's a huge challenge to kind of, you know, make your lectures and your sessions so interactive and engrossing that you hold on to the interest, you know, because here now, you know, technology, it's a passive medium. You have 10 other options, you have diversions, you have distractions, you know, on your mobile phone, you know, you can be on a Zoom meeting and simultaneously be checking your WhatsApp. So, you know, there's so many options, and children, you know, these days, with all due respect to the digital space and the kind of, immense opportunities it's provided us, what I feel that we are majorly running low on concentration. It's hugely kind of, you know, affected our concentration levels. You know, this, I don't remember, like my 10-year-old would, you know, this has been happening for a couple of years, you know, that they go to a place, maybe a wedding or a get together, and 5-10 minutes into it, and they say, oh, I'm getting bored. So, you know, as 10-year and as 8-year-olds ourselves, I mean, we did not know, you know, what getting bored. We would go perhaps and interact, find that new boy or a new girl sitting in the other corner of the room, go and chat and interact. But now, you know, because of so much of media exposure and so much of bombardment of, you know, simultaneous media alternatives and options before you, the concentration and your patience and everything is getting affected, you know. So then how to sustain the interest of the participant, of the student, to make him active and proactive rather than just being a passive, you know, just a participant who's there on my chat list, is a difficult problem.
I do fully agree with you. Student has to participate in the process. In fact, what I found is that this digital teaching, you know, what we tried initially, and now we are changing as I see, you know, closely my wife, my son. So I realized that initially they tried what they were doing. They just tried to replicate that on digital platform. That didn't work. So the digital curriculum also, you know, if you are doing it on digital medium, the curriculum also should change. For example, a simple thing. The last week he had his exams. My son had his exams. So 2 exams of half an hour each, and then 7 classes. The exams are happening with the camera on, with 2 equipment on, the laptop and the camera, right? After the exam, he's immediately scanning the copy and sending. So 2 exams and then 7 classes, and happening on digital medium. So I immediately said, and I think I put up a social media post that you try doing 7 webinars a day, and then you will realize the pain. It's not done. 7 classes sitting in the classroom and 7 classes sitting in digital medium for 40 minutes or 30 minutes each are very different. Very draining. So there are many issues that has to be settled, and anyone has any question? I don't find any questions.
Just to add on, you know, it's hugely affecting the physical health. For the eyes, for example, you know, the blue rays from the screen, for like near about 8 hours a day when you're sitting on the screen. The other hassle is, when you have your laptop before you, I mean, it's very difficult. It's a practical problem. How do you write? So what's happening is the children are, unable to complete their classwork. And now everything gets, kind of becomes a homework, and this is a huge pile up of work. So there are like, very many problems. But I'm sure, that digital learning is there. I mean, we have to kind of devise, like you already mentioned.
No, but I think the children are more adaptable than us, because I have I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. I have a 6-year-old.
No, please.
And the teachers needed more time to adapt to as I observed as a mother, more time to adapt to the digital platform and how to operate and the transition. Whereas my 6-year-old, from day one, it was a very smooth transition for him. He does karate in front of the laptop. He does dance, music classes, and all other subjects like French and English and maths.
Fully agree.
Children are much more adaptable than we give them credit for.
What is happening is we are failing to adapt to the system and asking them to conform, right? The reverse is true. We should learn from them, and that is how I noticed also. The teacher is getting irritated because he or she is not getting the response, but the fellow is listening. You ask him and you will know that whether he is listening or not. So there are these things. And so before we wrap up, I think we should pick some, I should pick your brain on, just a few things. I think you mentioned about the changes that are coming, and that the economy, you expect it to shrink, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm sure you are following the rural part. Rural India is booming, I tell you. And I'm not talking out of any data. I mean, matching both sides. If you take all those data, sales of many things, the cash component in sales, so that is contributing half of the GDP. My perception is, I should tell you, my perception is by October, if the Kharif crop is good, we will see at least 80% of the economy is back with a bang. The problem is with the areas like travel, tourism, aviation, real estate, right? Some things, a few sectors which I believe which were weak, like real estate, which was fundamentally weak before the COVID hit. And some sectors which are hit because of the pandemic and the total breakdown in the system. But I've been following, but I think we are going to, we will exchange notes how it is going, but I think we will have kind of a V-shaped recovery. That is what my prediction is. I'm sure we will come back with many such discussions. We have nothing else to do. But it has actually brought us very interesting changes. I was today, before entering this, I was in a in a group discussion where the former RBI Deputy Governor was there, some top economists were there from across the world, a few corporate guys were there. These are last few days I have attended many closed meetings. Normally, these were geography specific, like the fellow in Delhi is attending somewhere, right? I think it has now become a norm. We are breaking that barrier. So here, the person who thought that his geography is giving him some dividend, right? Who treated geography as a preserve, he is going to suffer.
I think as far as, the recovery which you mentioned, I tend to agree with you. It is going to be a V-shaped recovery. Only with the caveat that some sectors are going to suffer more. As you mentioned, the tourism,
Sure.
others, and the MSME as a block, I think is in bad shape. They are in real bad shape.
Yes.
Many of the MSMEs are going to go out of business, and we are all hopeful that the recovery will start in October. But I think we are dealing with something we don't know. So the pandemic, I mean, if there is a resurgence again in October, we may go to January or February. But that is something which we have to live with.
No, we have to live with it for 2 years, I tell you, because if you see the vaccine is coming by October, right? September, October, you can say. Now that is about just the formal arrival. By the time it will be available to people, And mind you, you have 140 crore people over here, right? So it will be just one full year from the arrival. And so our behavior has been changed for quite some time. I'm sure you are aware. When I first time went to Hong Kong and all these places, Southeast Asian countries in 2010. So I saw people have been wearing masks. Later I came to know that this practice they adopted since the time of SARS. It has become part of their culture. But over here, of course, we don't wear a mask even if there is a danger, but that's a different issue altogether. Thanks for joining this fantastic discussion, I think. Thanks everyone. Thanks Partho. Thanks Ms. Avadhikari. Thanks Vishwajit. Thanks Ms. Yasmin. Thank you.